So we looked at what emotions are. Now we're looking at influences on emotional expression, and the first one is personality. There's a strong, clear relationship between personality and the way people experience and communicate those emotions. For example, somebody who's extroverted reports more positive emotions in everyday life than somebody who's introverted. If you have a tendency to worry, be anxious and feel apprehensive, then these individuals report more negative emotions. So you can, if you are introverted, engage online. And this is a rewarding way to gain some amount of confidence that will pay off in satisfying face-to-face relationships. Certainly, online relationships shouldn't be a way to avoid in-person communication. The second factor that influences emotional expression is culture. Even though we, as individuals all around the world, experience the same emotions, the same events can generate quite different feelings in different cultures. Culture has an effect on how emotions are valued. Asian Americans and Hong Kong Chinese value low arousal positive effect, and that is being calm, relaxed, and peaceful. European Americans, by contrast, tend to value higher arousal positive affects such as excitement, enthusiasm, and elation. One of the most significant factors influencing emotional expression is the position of a culture on the individualism collectivism spectrum that we spoke about early on. Members of collectivistic cultures, such as Japan and India, will prize harmony among members of the in-group and discourage expression of negative emotions that might upset that harmony, that relationship among people that belong to the in-group. On the other hand, in highly individualistic cultures such as the USA and Canada, Germany as well, people feel comfortable revealing their feelings to people whom they are close. So individualists and collectivists also handle emotional expression with members of out-groups. We looked at in-groups, now it's out-groups rather differently. Whereas individualists are quite frank about expressing negative emotions toward outsiders, collectivists are more likely to hide that emotion, such as disliking. So it's easy to see how difference in display rules can lead to conflict and communication problems. So an individualistic North American might view a collectivistic Asian as deceptive maybe, or less than candid, whereas people raised in Asia could easily regard Americans as overly demonstrative, displaying emotion. Look at the phrase, I love you. Research has found that Americans tend to say the phrase more frequently and to more people than do members of most other cultures. So we've looked at personality, we've looked at cultures, influences. Now third, we'll look at gender. Gender roles often shape the ways in which men and women experience and express their emotions. Research suggests that women are faster than men at recognizing emotions from the facial cues. They're better at identifying multiple emotions, are better at judging emotions from eye behavior alone, and are more stimulated by emotional data and remember them better than men do. So there is some truth in the cultural stereotype of the inexpressive male and the more demonstrative female. So on the whole, women seem more likely than men to verbally and non-verbally express a wide range of feelings. Men are more likely to experience something called alexithymia, a reluctance to talk about feelings, which can certainly lead to relational challenges. So fathers that mask their emotions more than mothers do will certainly lead their children to have more difficulty reading their father's emotional expressions. And suppression of emotions by husbands tends to lead, or is a good predictor of dissatisfaction and discord in the early years of marriage. So, social conventions and roles is another influencer. So, in mainstream US society, the unwritten rules of communication discourage the direct verbal expression of most emotions. Most emotions, remember that. So think of how often you hear in one day, people would say, I'm angry or I'm embarrassed. And you find out that they are somewhat rare. People are generally comfortable making statements of fact and often delight in expressing their opinions, but they rarely disclose how they feel. On the other hand, what they will do is they tend to act out rather than talk out the emotions. So there are the various descriptions of the way contemporary society discourages expressions of anger. People willingly disclose positive and negative feelings about absentee third parties. On the other hand, spouses rarely verbalize face-threatening feelings, such as I'm disappointed in you or I'm angry at you. I'm not sure it's as rare as they say it is. This isn't to suggest that restricting emotion expression is always a bad idea. Researchers use the term emotional labor to describe situations in which managing and even suppressing emotions are both appropriate and necessary. Another influence is social media. Communicators generally express more emotion online than they do in person. So, like we found in chapter 1, online disinhibition can also encourage emotional outbursts and tirades. And sometimes social media can also feed emotional responses. The bottom line is that both senders and receivers experience emotions more intensely online. And then the last influencer is emotional contagion. Emotions can spread from one person to another through a process known as emotional contagion. So we catch feelings from one another as they were somewhat of a social virus. It happens between students and teachers, customers and employees, husbands and wives. It can happen online as well as in person. The good news is that positive posts are contagious too, just as negative ones. And the positive posts are contagious at even greater rates. So it's important to recognize that communicating your feelings online with people who may not know you well can have an impact on the feelings and moods of others.